Hello and welcome. This is Infocus. I'm Bradley Valenaki. Electricity is a key utility in production, driving business and lighting up homes. Delivering reliable electricity is a challenge in Papua New Guinea and in other parts of the world. The government has set an ambitious target that is to see 70% of the population receive electricity or connected in 9 years' time. Now I'm privileged to have with me in studio the Managing Director for the country's power company, PNG Power, Mr. Flagon Bekker. Sir, thank you very much for coming onto the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, right. So challenging times this year during the global health pandemic. How has that affected your work?
Well, Bradley, we're as a power company here in PNG, we're an essential service provider, and we don't make any excuses for our performance. Our people are here to serve the people of PNG, but I can tell you that COVID-19 has been very tough on our business. Again, it's not an excuse. We're frontline workers. We see ourselves as essential service providers into the country. But it affects us in numerous ways. It slows our projects down because we can't travel as freely. We're a capital-intensive business. We need to import equipment, so when shipping lanes and shipping lines are delayed, it affects our business. Our people, we're fundamentally a people business. So whether it's the call center, or whether it's our operations people, or whether it's our engineers, when they can't come to work, it does affect us. The way we've dealt with it is we have some strict COVID-19 protocols. So we comply with the WHO directives and guidelines, and obviously the national guidelines as well. But we have a weekly crisis management team meeting where we look and review at how we treat COVID and how we behave with respect to COVID. So basically it's three parts of how we deal with COVID. First of all, we take care of our people in terms of PPE. We have a roster system depending on what happens, so we try to separate people physically and in time. And then thirdly, the third defense that we have is of course our testing. So we test our people on a regular basis, and then of course as the vaccine program here in PNG starts to gain momentum, we'll put our essential frontline workers onto that list as a primary element, and then we'll be looking to support the vaccination program by the government.
All right.
For everyone.
So you have around 2,000 people operating
Yes.
under you throughout the country, but also they're not immune to COVID-19, obviously. How has the business actually dealt with those that have fallen ill to COVID-19?
So we have had our share of COVID-19 positive employees. So what we do typically is immediately they're confined to working from home as required. They can't come back to work until they've tested negative. We've had instances where some of our employees have tested positive in a sequential, so repeatedly, and that's okay. So what we do is we make sure that they work from home, they test before they come back, and then of course, if their health is severely affected, we take all the precautions we can to help them and their families. So we always put our people first, and making sure that they're healthy and fit when they come back to work.
Okay, so these people are working around the clock to make sure that the households here in Papua New Guinea get the electricity that they deserve at this time. Now, but there's also continuous blackouts here in the country, Papua New Guinea, and you have attributed this to the aging infrastructure in Papua New Guinea. How is PNG Power addressing that?
You're right. Look, the first thing is, and I said it in the beginning and I'll say it again, we don't make an excuse for our performance. Our performance as a company, as the state-owned utility of power, it is not acceptable that we have the amount of blackouts and outages that we do have nationally. So it's a national problem, and we deal with it nationally. Yes, the root cause really behind the blackouts goes back 10, 15 years. From the beginning, there wasn't a strong planned maintenance program. This is a capital-intensive industry. Planned maintenance is fundamental to keeping equipment reliable, available, and in tip-top shape. I think as a country, we haven't done that very well, and specifically as a sector, we haven't performed well in that respect. So yes, it's aging infrastructure. The way we're going to deal with it, and the way we're going to fix this, is we're going to do refurbishment, we're going to do repairs, and we're going to replace. We're looking at spending north of 200 million kina within the next 18 months to stabilize our grids. So if you just look in terms of poles and wires, we'll be spending more than 200 million kina just getting the basics right of putting some of the equipment back up to where they should be. It won't fix the problem, because as you can appreciate, it's been legacy issues, there's been underinvestment, there's been lack of maintenance. But what we're looking at now is, in the short term, let's just stabilize the grids as they stand. Then, of course, as we look ahead 2-3 years and beyond, we will reinvest in technology and we'll bring the best equipment that we can afford to bear on the grid. So the short term, it's about stabilization, and the longer term, it's about really repairing and fixing the problem once and for all.
All right, so interesting discussions there. We'll head off for a short break and come back on the other side with more. This is Infocus. Welcome back. Now we're talking about electricity, we're talking about power now on the program, and continuing on from our discussions, Mr. Bekker, is the amount of people and businesses that are using the services from PNG Power at the moment.
You're looking at a connection rate of around 12 to 13% of the population is currently connected to our grids. Clearly, that's not good enough. Our plans for 2030 are to connect 70% plus. Businesses, so our segments, our customer segments consist, of course, of residential, of industrial, and then what I call, heavy industrial or resource companies. So typically how this sector works and how we work here in PNG is we have a cross-subsidization model. In other words, our industrial customers, our heavy use mining customers, fundamentally subsidize, you and I in the residential sector are subsidized by the fees that we charge our big company customers. What we've done as a company over the last few years is we've managed to alienate that segment, those two segments, the heavy users or the heavy industrial users across the country. And we're going to fix that. We're determined to bring those heavy mining customers, heavy industrial customers back onto the grid. And so first of all, we'll work to retain the customers we have, and then we want to grow. We want to grow with businesses. We want to grow with heavy industry, because through that cross-subsidization model, we're able to then take the load off people like yourself and myself and the people of PNG.
All right. So going back to the aging infrastructure and the plan that is at hand to bring it up to a level where it should be. You said 200 million kina for that purpose. Do we have that at the moment?
So we've gone through it. So we're a corporate entity. We have a share owner, and of course, ultimately, we're owned by the citizens of PNG, by yourself. You own PNG Power. We went through a process whereby we had to motivate, we had to explain how much money we need and what we want to spend it on. That process has now come to an end, and I'm glad to say that our share owner approved our budget at a board level like 2 weeks ago. So now we will go through the process by which those funds will be released, and we're expecting those funds to be released on a timely basis very, very shortly. So it's a good question you raised there. So yes, we're going to spend north of 200 million kina on stabilizing the grids, and that money we will spend on hardware, on kit, on equipment, on things that we need, engineering things, equipment, spares, to refurb, repair, and then replace. So that money will be made available very, very shortly.
So I guess looking at the bigger picture, that sort of support should continue, and we hope that continues in the years to come.
You're right. You know, Bradley, we're a capital-intensive industry. You know, we're talking about very large transmission transformers, distribution transformers, generators. You know, this is very, very expensive equipment, very specialized equipment, and of course we have to import it. And of course a lot of that we have to pay for in foreign exchange, in foreign currency. To do that, you can't stop funding it. It has to be a drip of investment and of payment and of a release of funds on a regular basis, so that you can keep the grid available and reliable over time.
So say annually, how much is required to keep the business running and at a reliable outcome?
Yeah. So if you look at if we didn't have legacy issues, you know, if we had 10, 15 years ago started to do planned maintenance, to just do the basics of keeping the grid where it should be, you know, the money that we're spending now really wouldn't be needed. So to answer your question, typically between 2 to 5% on an annualized basis is what you need to maintain the integrity of your assets. But that isn't the challenge we have. You know, we have to rebuild. We have to go back and refurb, repair, and replace, and stabilize the grid first, and then over the longer term, continue to invest to bring it up to the next level, which is what we're doing together with our PEP partners. Of course, at APEC 2018, very exciting announcements were made, and that investment is about taking the grid and taking PNG Power to the next level. Yeah. So once it's at the next level, you're looking at between 2 and 5% of revenue that you reinvest on a regular basis, roughly.
Yeah, Mr. Bekker, good pointers there. We'll speak more on the 2018 agreement and what it will translate into for the country Papua New Guinea on the other side. Welcome back to Infocus, and I still have with me in the studio the Managing Director for PNG Power Limited. Now, Mr. Bekker, we spoke about the agreement that was signed in Papua New Guinea during the APEC summit between the countries Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and the US, giving support for this electrification rollout here in Papua New Guinea. How much of that has already been implemented here in the country?
So that announcement in 2018 was a breath of fresh air for PNG Power. Our partners started immediately on capability, on capacity building, and engaging with us to start planning what would mean. To be honest, COVID-19 started, you know, a year and a half ago. COVID-19 hit PNG. As it did globally. And you know, I'd be lying to you if I said that didn't affect us. You know, and I think my PEP partners would agree that they couldn't have moved any faster, and COVID did slow it down. But you're looking, you know, over the next 5 to 8 years, through our PEP partners, we'll be spending north of 2 billion kina on developing this sector. A lot of that funding is now coming through, and we just recently announced a string of financial support packages, most recently from the New Zealand government for Enga province, about 30 million US overall. And so these projects, if you look at the rural electrification projects, we have north of 35 individual projects nationally that are a combination of local government, PEP partners, and obviously the government of PNG, and then ourselves as well, capital that we put in to those businesses and those sections as well. So rural electrification, you're looking, as I said, north of 35 projects. PEP projects, in terms of the bigger, more glamorous ones, you're looking at another 20 to 25. And these are all now starting to accelerate. We have Devune being commissioned in a month's time. We have Warrengoy coming online within the next 8 to 12 weeks. We have Yonki Toe coming online and towards the back end of September. I mean, the list is too long, and I'd love to share with your viewers just a little bit about some of these projects, if you don't mind. So I have a list here, and what we're going to start doing is through the mainstream media, and also on your show, Bradley, I'd appreciate the opportunity to come on again and actually report back to the people of PNG on the status of these projects. So, for example, I can tell you that 700 million kina of projects are on track despite COVID-19. 300 million kina are what we call on a recovery plan. And we have a plan to bring them back in. And then a further 200 million projects are on track as we speak. So and if you add that up, you look at about 1.2 billion kina worth of projects, investment happening in this sector, and the majority of which are on track. But there are a few that we've got on a recovery plan.
All right. So all of this, making use of the current facilities in terms of the hydro facilities we have in the country, Papua New Guinea, or this will come out from new projects?
No, so these are, some of the projects are refurbished projects. Some of them are new projects. So if you look at our the grid strengthening project on the Ramu grid, we will be sending you a bit of an animation on so what does a blackout look like on the Ramu grid and why does it happen? The investment by the government of Japan on the grid strengthening project, which we call the JICA project within PNG Power. The JICA project is about putting in what we call N-1 redundancy. That project is a transmission line investment. So there is an example of a new capital investment project that will be coming online towards the middle end of 2022. That will go a long way to supporting grid stability on the Ramu grid. And the animation that will run a little later will show your viewers why blackouts happen. And when that happens, a project like JICA, that transmission line investment project, will help alleviate that.
All right. So looking at the projects we have in Papua New Guinea in terms of hydropower, fuel power, and recently gas-fired power here in Papua New Guinea, how has the new ways of producing electricity contributed towards providing electricity to the households throughout Papua New Guinea?
So if you look at, we're a vertically integrated utility. So what that means is we generate our own power, we transmit, distribute, and we sell. It's unusual these days to have a company that is vertically integrated. Most of the sectors around the world have unbundled. They've separated generation from T&D, from retail. What you're referring to is the generation part of our business. Generation part of the business is fundamentally about fuel converted into electrical energy. And you're right, you mentioned gas. You mentioned, the solar is people have rooftop solar now. That's, the cost of solar has come right down over the last 10, 15 years. Then you've got hydro. In PNG, we're blessed with huge renewable resources, particularly hydro. So yes, the answer to future lower tariffs for the people of PNG starts in the generation space through what we call the low-cost power development plan. So we have a low-cost power development plan that explains very clearly on what energy mix is the best or optimal energy mix so that over time we can drop the tariffs to the people of PNG. So you would have seen a lot of announcements about gas-fired power. You would have seen a lot of announcements about hydro. You would have seen a lot of announcements about what's happening with solar or hybridization. We hybridize our thermal assets. And in a nutshell, I'd like to tell everyone, all your viewers, there is space for everyone. Gas will have the opportunity to contribute to the generation asset base. But so will hydro, so will solar, so will a range of other technologies. So there isn't one answer. It's a mixture. It's an energy mix that you require in the right ratios so that you can drop your generation costs, and then that will then roll onto lower tariffs going forward. That is called the LCPDP, the Low Cost Power Development Plan. That's our Bible for how we are going to lower energy costs.
All right. So the Managing Director for PNG Power, Mr. Flagon Bekker, thank you very much for making time available. We appreciate your time with us today.
Thank you, Bradley.
All right, this has been Infocus. You can engage with us social on our Facebook and Twitter pages. You can also watch this program if you've missed it a little later on YouTube. From all of us here, stay safe. Bye for now.